Salutations, everybody. It is Matty here today. I hope you're all doing absolutely excellent. Today, we are gathering to talk about Atomfall. Now, naturally, as a huge Fallout fan, of course, this game was immediately on my radar the moment it was announced. I could smell the Fallout energy on it. But also, more interestingly to me, is that this was from Rebellion. Rebellion is typically known for the Sniper Elite franchise, which I call one of gaming's greatest comfort foods. It's not going to dramatically transform or crack your Game of the Year list, but it's a damn good time because of the great X-ray vision kill cams, as well as the new Sniper Jaeger system, which is basically bringing invaders into Sniper Elite, plus the disguise system, which is kind of Hitman coded. It's just a really fun series. But now they're trying their hand at something new, something that is both Fallout and Stalker coded. And I have to say, as someone who's been playing it for a decent amount of time now, I've been really enjoying my time with Atomfall, which may come as a bit of a surprise. You might remember I attended Gamescom LA in August of last year. I previewed a ton of games, and in sort of a game jam preview video, I talked about in passing Atomfall and how my time with it really squished a lot of the excitement out of my body for the game. That was because of the game's combat AI. And in a sense, I think my concerns are still pretty valid, because when I saw they were coming out in March, based on what I played, I went, there's no way it's going to be ready in that time. And yeah, the combat AI is still bad, but it's improved compared to that August experience where it immediately was frustrating, broken stealth gameplay. You could see the ideas were here, but it needed a lot of polish. So it's not a perfect experience. In a lot of ways, it's very flawed, but I find it very fun. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you are new here and you're into what's going on with games, right? Some day one reviews, consider subscribing. We've been doing reviews and impressions all over the place between here and Retro Rebound. So again, get subscribed. Now, let's start off at the foundation. If you are a Fallout fan, what is here for you from that franchise? It really starts with the post-apocalyptic feel. Now, it's not like a nuke has been dropped per se, but you are in such an abandoned location, they call it the zone, that it does feel post-apocalyptic. There is a retro future aesthetic here in the technology that you see across its world. And there's also nationalistic world design, the propaganda posters that you'll see throughout all these different towns and buildings that you crawl through really does paint this feeling of British pride, if you will. However, there's also basically a vault door opening sequence when you enter a location called the Interchange. So yeah, it's pretty on the nose there. When it comes to Stalker though, which is a franchise I'm admittedly pretty new to, with my first Stalker experience being with Stalker 2, it's the survival elements, the realism inspired shooting. You're not going to be mowing through enemy camps with fully auto weapons and have tons of ammo. That's not the experience here. Its dialogue is very similar to what you get in a Stalker game, and you'll see a lot of plant life reclaiming every corner of the environment. And you better get used to seeing a lot of green, because I do mean every corner, every town, it's a lot of green no matter what zone you're in. The other part of the foundation that you'll see right away at the start of the game is the alternate history approach, that during the 1960s where the Wyndham nuclear disaster occurred, and by the way, like an actual real event, this goes a different path where now North England turns into a quarantine zone. So yeah, even Fallout London mod fans, you might get a little taste of that here. Now, what I really want to do is just get a lot of my problems out of the way with this game. Not only to be upfront about it, because I do like it a lot in spite of those flaws and you should be aware of them, but also I just think there's so many more exciting things about this game that outweigh them. But again, you should just be aware of these flaws. So let's start off with the combat AI, because I did lead in with that with my preview. Particularly the part that breaks with the combat AI is the enemies pathing to you. A lot of times they'll get stuck on walls and just stare at you, and it's open season. They'll stop attacking you. You'll see them yelling different one-liners at you, but nothing's really happening, and you'll just be able to pick them, free headshot, no problem. And it squishes an otherwise typically challenging game on its recommended difficulty setting that I was playing on. Sometimes patrols, although not very frequently, will spawn near you, and because this is such a resource-driven game, it does feel a little cheap when something like this happens. And also sometimes they just throw a lot of rats my way, and you're just trying to stomp all of them out, and I could get 5, 6 rats, but they will just I stepped into the interchange and they're like, here's 19 rats. Stomp them all out or throw a Molotov cocktail at them, something like that. But I don't know, it was just such a weird enemy to throw at you in mass. Nonetheless, there's that. Stealth also isn't very good. It could be a lot better. You'll silently take out a guard, for example, and then their body is almost immediately spotted, meaning that you're likely going to be immediately spotted in the near future, because even when you're in hiding, they just see you. which I can appreciate. The whole tall grass doesn't actually work as well in reality compared to the actual game mechanic, but when the game heavily incentivizes stealth, I found this just to be a touch strange. Sometimes also you'll just be spotted from a mile out. Like I had one time I was ambushing a druid castle, and just like across this entire chasm, I was like, oh, someone spotted me. Where is it? And I realized like there's this little dot out there. This little human being spotted me. It was like, hey, he's over there. Again, very realistic, I guess, but in a way that just felt super cheap. And it's a little bit of jank that I'll get into a lot throughout this review, where there was a time I choked out a guard outside of an entrance and then entered that building, got what I needed, and left, and he respawned while the same guard I choked out was still dead on the ground, and he wasn't reacting to the dead guard or anything. So there's moments like that. The other thing that does affect stealth gameplay is audio, because this game doesn't have a map or markers on enemies, which is fine, by the way, and I encourage it for this style of game. So you're led to heavily rely on sound to know where your enemies are located. Unfortunately, if you're using those barks and commands to find out where the enemies are, you're SOL, because all the spoken lines are not localized, meaning that it's like everyone is right next to you with the audio arriving in both your ears. So this means that they could be to your right around the corner of a building, and it'll sound like they're right on top of you, which again really just hurts the stealth experience, because it's so needed oftentimes. And I think the stealth gameplay would be better, even with the flaws with the AI I pointed out, if I could just locate them via sound and just navigate the environment using my ears. Healing in combat is hardcore for sure, but I'm not sure I do love it. You have to open the pause menu, and when enemies can pretty much like 3-shot you, and sometimes will apply like bleeding to you, which will kill you for sure and kill you very fast, like you need to pause and typically heal during combat. And when enemies are using melee weapons to harass you and apply these status effects on you, I just wish they let you hotkey at least one healing item. The survival mechanics are a little light, which, by the way, this isn't a problem. I just think it could be for some. It's mainly down to managing healing items with things like grenades and Molotovs, like just managing really your inventory system more than anything. It's not focusing on hunger, thirst, or rest. And honestly, if you don't want to deal with any of this at all, there's difficulty options that can just turn off combat entirely, and you just want to interface with the story. There's the occasional frame dip with no kind of visual modes here on Series X where I played. There's no fast travel, but I found it manageable. I could see some finding it a little tedious, and in towns there are a decent amount of loading screens. They're very quick, but they are there. So it truly is, when you combine this with some of the visual elements you see, like facial animations and whatnot, it is kind of the BGS experience at the end of the day. So those are the problems. We got them all out of the way. You're aware of them. Does that really push you off? If not, I got great news for you. The best thing this game does is its interconnected world. It reminded me a lot of when I played Vampire, and that's a game I hold in very high regard as well. I adore that game. So anything that reminds me of that, you know, you're in good company. To be clear though, I'm going to be extremely light on story details here, because to me, the narrative mechanics are the real main grab of this game, and just uncovering that mystery is so crucial to your experience that if you end up checking out other reviewers, which I always encourage, you should tab out if you see them start going into deep story details. I'm going to keep it light, like the things you see and hear in the first 5 minutes, but otherwise, like, you're good to go here. But just know, if I sound very surface level on what's actually happening here, it is because I think uncovering it every step of the way just was that carrot on the end of the stick for me, and I think it would be for you as well. So effectively what happens is you wake up in a lab to start the game with no memory of what has happened before. So yes, the amnesiac protagonist, of course. The most you know is that the zone is now a lawless land, so you want to find out what happened, or honestly, you can just get out. Who cares what happened? You'll explore a plethora of zones, all full of locations for you to pick through and get a clue as to what exactly is going on. And if you do miss the Bethesda Game Studios wandering experience, I think it really delivers here, that feeling of seeing something on the horizon and investigating, and also giving you something really worthwhile. Now, what I don't want to oversell to you is the actual narrative itself, but this is a real mystery game. There are no waypoints per se, no quest markers. It's all about finding readables and sometimes the very rare audio logs, and tracking down through context clues and coordinates where your next lead will be. Like, it's directionless, and I think for people who need guides or like guides or want to optimize their gaming time and always be moving forward, you might have a little bit of trouble with this, because sometimes there is a bit of like, what do I do next? But I think it just keeps you so engaged mentally, unlike many other games that even though the narrative isn't knocking you on your ass like, whoa, what a great plot twist or something, bro. It's not about that. It's about, again, just that peeling back the layers and figuring out like what was happening in the interchange. What are these factions in this world? Like, why are the protocol still here? How did they get trapped in all of this? Why are the druids pretty much savages? What do they believe in? Oh, it's religiously driven? Interesting. In a way, its narrative mechanics, emphasis on the word mechanics, okay, so don't mishear me here, are similar to that of BioShock, although obviously not nearly as good in the narrative department, but it's that absolutely delightful sequence of aha moments that this game does have, which is similar to how I felt when playing BioShock for the first time. So what happens is, like, you can have a metal detector and you'll find a little buried cache somewhere out in the zone, and you'll dig it up and there'll be a note in there and you'll read about how someone was hiding something in the mines. And so then you start to look around the map to see if you can find the mines or other notes or audio logs that will tell you about where the mines might be located. But even when you find that, it's not like it's going to get marked on your map. You're going to see a general sketch of where it'll be, or the game will give you coordinates like it's at 27.5 E and 90 N, and you'll go to that coordinate and it'll be there. But for me, as I'm going to those sets of coordinates I've set for myself, and in turn you are starting to follow a waypoint, I'll get distracted so many times. I'll just be wandering around and go, hey, what is that? Oh, I got to check that out over there, because I'm always looking for the next lead. And so the game manages to not only stagger out its content, but it also funnels really in an intelligent way where you can tackle it in any order you want. There's no right way of doing this game's narrative. There's no real structure to it. And so what I love about it is, as I'm reading these notes, they are connected to characters that are living in this world. So it's not like, say, what some people would say Fallout 76's storytelling tried to do when it first came out, right? Was reading a lot of notes, reading a lot of terminal logs, a lot of audio logs, right? Sounds familiar, except you're not chasing ghosts here. You're finding history in this world. You're finding the remnants of someone who you're going to meet later, and maybe even pick up where they left off or work together with them to figure out whatever they were looking into. But what I think is so impressive, and why I went back to Vampire, is because all of these characters are just like woven together in such a tight-knit way. You don't immediately realize it. But for example, I'll just say I found a crashed helicopter. I found an audio log in there. Turns out that this person who was on this helicopter ended up being captured by another faction, and that the only way I could get into that faction was by doing another faction a favor. And so then you're starting to go all over the map, doing favors for people, finding more leads, finding more quests, and just it builds and builds from there. But again, it's all of these lines are interconnected. Like it's a conspiracy board forming in your mind of who done it, what exactly is happening here. And again, I think it's just awesome to figure out the mystery of this game. When you're talking to NPCs, they'll actually tell you the emotion you're using when talking to them. I do like this because it's something that I talked about, say, with Dragon Age: The Veilguard, where the emotion wheel and the little pictures that tell you how you're maybe gonna reply just doesn't work for me, where this game's like, you're prying, you're desperate, you're helpful, you're honest, you're hopeful, whatever it may be, the game just tells you that. So NPC interaction, I think, because it's so infrequent, really I was like dialed in on every conversation the game had, because I knew this was like a well of information. So if you're really into just putting together a narrative like I am, I just had so much fun talking to characters. I wish there were more characters to talk to, honestly. There's a lot of characters that are just villager or guard, and I'm like, man, I want to talk to everybody. So it is a little frustrating in that department, but again, it speaks to it being a great framework. There's also a unique barter system when you do interact with, say, traders in the zone. It doesn't involve currency. You're not going to find money or anything like that. So you're going to trade items for items, and each item has value that's not really communicated to you. So it's kind of up to you how much you personally value something. Like, here, I'll craft a bunch of grenades and I'll give them over to this vendor, and in turn I'll take this recipe and this ammo and this ingredient I need to craft something else. So I just also like the bartering system, the trading system in this game. It all feels very real. When you think you're not tracking leads, and I say it like that because you're always going to be, but when you think you're like going off the beaten path, you'll find not only those leads, but also recipes, combat training manuals, which will expand your skill set, ammo. So not only are you getting that feeling of when you go the extra mile, like, oh sweet, I learned something about the story, but you also feel duly rewarded when it comes to the resource management part of things, because there's times I felt like the game just totally stacked me up, and I was like, dude, there's no way they're gonna do this. Like, this is a survival game. Why am I so powerful? But then all of a sudden, after fighting and scratching and clawing my way through the zone, I have like 4 bullets left. I'm like, please don't see me. Please don't see me. So it does have a good feel on resource management, which was one of my concerns. Like, it's a first time project for this team to try and do something like this. And you go from something like Sniper Elite, where you can comfortably snipe from a distance and find ammo everywhere, to something like this. Really great transition. But ultimately, the story is an exploration of science gone too far. And while I don't think the overall narrative might knock your socks off, although I've been loving it, they managed to make uncovering it fun, which does feel super original. Perhaps more important to all of this, that I should have mentioned earlier, is the agency that you're given to tackle the game as you see fit. I already talked about the directionless nature of the game, how you can just tackle it all out of order. That's cool and all, but this does mean also casting morality to the wind and, say, for example, killing the baker because she's acting very suspicious and you know she's hiding something, and you end up finding a key on her body and you find a secret, I won't spoil, tucked away upstairs. But there's also other ways to handle that problem, like 3 other ways I found. I was really impressed at the amount of options here. Or it means helping someone out who may grant you entry to a location that would otherwise be on lockdown with all guns pointed at you. So yeah, there's a lot of choice here. There's multiple endings, but this is not, to be clear, an RPG. Yes, like I said, multiple endings, there are quest choices, there's a pretty thin skill system here when you level up, but you're not creating a character, picking a playstyle, etc. The leveling system scales as you find these various manuals throughout your exploration. Upon finding training stimulants, you can spend them to unlock things like reducing the noise that you make during a takedown, or how many ingredients that your character can carry. And you'll be shooting a lot of enemies as you go along, and your damage is not determined by a stat system. For example, any weapon you've got, name it, if it hits him in the head, it's a one-shot kill. A pistol, a rifle, SMG, bow and arrow feels especially good in this game. One-shot kill. So there's no stat system or anything you really need to manage here. And then you're really picking up a lot of ingredients that tie into the game's crafting system. So you'll make things like bandages, antidotes, nail grenades to help you survive out in the zone. So it's definitely more on the action survival component of things. Don't think it's like a full-on role-playing game, despite a lot of Fallout comparisons that myself and many are going to make. It's purely in the aesthetic department of things. But at the end, ladies and gentlemen, I have been having a blast with Atomfall. This game, while it does have its problems, really has its hooks in me. Again, I just love how they're handling the narrative mechanics of it all. I love interacting with its world, its characters, reading all those notes. If you don't like reading a bunch of notes, none of them are very long in my opinion. Like, they're 3 paragraphs max, and I thought it was all very digestible. Kind of reminded me a little bit of Lies of P, where when I was reading the notes in that game, they were just broken up in a way that felt, again, very digestible. So they did a great job here, and I hope this is the start of a new series. I feel like there's a lot of potential here, and that Atomfall 2 could really elevate things with better combat AI, better stealth, that sort of thing. But they did talk about this almost like it was a tech experiment at Rebellion that just turned into a full game. So, I mean, I don't know. Maybe they were just like, oh, y'all like this, interesting. But I just, again, as a Fallout fan, of course it speaks to my sensibilities, but I just really love the narrative mechanics here, and the gameplay is rock solid enough where even when the AI is breaking a bit at times, I'm still having a good time overall. So Atomfall is available on Game Pass. If any of this sounds interesting, I definitely think it's at least worth a download. And if you pick it up, just know there are going to be some snags along the way on the technical side of things, both in the occasional but rare performance dip, and also especially in that AI. If you don't care about that stuff, I think Atomfall is money well spent in an otherwise extremely busy month. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, those are my thoughts on the game. Let me know about yours down below. Are you checking it out? Other than that, I'll catch you in the next video. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.